Hi, everyone. On today's podcast, we're going to talk about the comfort measures for labor and delivery nurses workshop. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to talk to you all today. This is Rebecca Decker, and we are going to be talking about the comfort measures for labor and delivery nurses workshop. And today I have three guests on the podcast who are going to act as a sort of panel where we're going to talk about our experiences. First, we have Jessica Hazboun, who is a registered nurse, a labor and delivery nurse, a childbirth educator, and an evidence-based birth instructor living in San Diego, California, and she has taught the workshop. Cat LaPlante is the director of our evidence-based birth instructor program. She's an EBB instructor, childbirth educator, and doula in the New Jersey, Philadelphia area, and she has also taught this workshop. And then we have Lori Lopez, who's a labor and delivery nurse and a childbirth educator in a hospital in Honolulu. And I had the privilege of meeting Lori when I taught this comfort measures workshop when I was in Hawaii this winter. Lori attended the workshop as a super user, which is a special kind of ticket level where she gets to go back to her hospital and teach many lessons to the other nurses, kind of like, showing them what she learned. So welcome everyone to the Evidence-Based Birth Podcast.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Thanks.
So who wants to go first? Why don't we have someone who teaches the workshop kind of explain what all you cover? It's a 3-hour workshop with contact hours, and talk a little bit about what you learned. Jessica, why don't you go first?
Sure. So this workshop is mainly geared on teaching labor and delivery nurses comfort measures to implement with their patients and the patients' families. And so we as labor and delivery nurses are very, very well prepared to read strips, to monitor heart tones, to intervene, to do resuscitation, but we know very little on how to instruct our patients and whoever their support people are on how to do comfort measures, non-pharmacological comfort measures. So for example, when I went into labor with my second child, I brought a birth ball, but I didn't know what to do with it. And so even asking some of my other, my nurse at the time, what she thought I should do with it, she just kind of like, move around on it for a little bit, rock back and forth. And after 5 minutes, I was kind of like, this is not helpful. And so what this class actually really helps you to do is to show you a whole bunch of different measures that you can implement with your patients, because there comes a point where you need something else. You need another barrier there to kind of push you through that discomfort and get you through it. And it just gives you another tool to be able to offer your patients. And what I found is that a lot of the labor and delivery nurses who came to my class were so excited to be able to offer it because they're so easy to implement and they're so important and there's so much evidence to back them up. And I just noticed that everyone was so excited to not only learn about it, but to practice hands-on as well. And to be a super user and take all of that information back to teach their units and their fellow nurses and just to implement change. I thought that was pretty awesome.
That is awesome. Kat, tell us, you had a lot of involvement with me in kind of crafting the curriculum. Tell everyone a little bit about how the workshop, how it's carried out, and like kind of what things are covered.
So what's covered in the workshop are a whole bunch of different techniques to help the expecting parent stay comfortable during labor. So we talk about things from massage, birth balls, all the way through rebozos, which are semi-new to a lot of people, cubs, which are these upright birthing stools that people have the ability to use, protecting the perineum. We do hydrotherapy stations, and we do a whole bunch of other really cool things that the attendees move through. So I said stations. We actually have stations set up where the attendees move through each station during their time. And the stations that they have are built so that they can learn the comfort measures with hands-on experience. And then, like Jessica said, take them back to their unit. And I think one of the things that's really important about this, especially when I taught it, because I taught it at a location that was outside of a hospital system. So I had a few different hospitals involved. So a few different nurses came from a few different hospitals. And it was cool to hear them talk about how the stations could be different in their hospital setting. So for example, hydrotherapy, we have a whole big birth tub blown up and they get in and they discuss the evidence behind hydrotherapy and how it can work and benefit the laboring mom in person. And when they see that, they get really excited about it. And so they start talking about, well, these are ways we can implement this in our hospital. Maybe they don't have tubs available, but they could bring tubs in. Same thing with the rebozo. A lot of people don't have those, but they were really excited to learn about it. I had a rebozo master, I think, at my station. I did have some volunteer doulas that were there with me to help out. And she really taught them a whole bunch of cool things that they could bring back to their patients. And I think Jessica hit something really important about this workshop. Nurses cannot be in the room all the time, even if they want to be, right? Even if they love that patient so much, they just can't be there. And what this workshop helps them do is really get those hands-on experience so they can teach the partner that's in the room. They can teach the partner what to do if they're not there, and they can teach the laboring mom different techniques so that anyone in the room can help when the nurse has to go to another patient in another place.
Yeah. And in addition to the stations, I think one thing that's unique is, we start by talking about the evidence on comfort measures, and then we pretty quickly break out into small groups and rotate around the stations, and then we debrief, and then we rotate it around more stations. One of the things, though, that I think that's really important that we do, and you kind of hit on this a little bit there, is we talk about the barriers to being able to use these non-pharmacologic comfort measures with your clients. So we conclude, the last big chunk of the workshop is talking about, what are the barriers to nurses being able to use what you've just been practicing in these skills stations. And then we start brainstorming solutions to 3 of these barriers. And we start just kind of breaking down, what can we do about this? What can we do about that? And I will say, and you guys can chime in, but probably the biggest barriers that come up that the nurses say when I teach this workshop is, number one, they have a lack of provider buy-in. So the physicians don't support what they want to do with this, which is sad, but it's pretty common that they say that. And then the other is continuous electronic fetal monitoring. So keeping women hooked up to the monitor on the bed, or even if you have a wireless monitor, is just such a barrier to moving around because they want you to stay still so you can get a good strip. And a lot of that goes back to the providers, right? So the nurses fear taking the patient off the monitor, or they fear asking the provider if the patient can come off the monitor. So we spend a lot of time just kind of talking about that, because I think some of the best solutions come from within those communities. Lori, do you mind sharing, since you were an attendee and not teaching, what were some of the things that you enjoyed learning about in the workshop?
To me, it was really beneficial to have those various stations to go through and to then be able to debrief. Being able to go to the stations and have that hands-on experience, and then being able to collaboratively work together with the other people in attendance was really helpful.
Which stations were your favorite?
So I have worked in previous hospitals where we had labor tubs, and the facility I'm currently at, we have showers. So to actually be able to get into an inflatable tub to see what that's like and how that works was very beneficial, and really got me thinking, how can we better serve our patient population and what they're wanting, along with how is this something that could potentially be feasible for our facility. I also really enjoyed the rebozo station. I have never seen a rebozo before, had never worked with one. And so as somebody that's teaching childbirth classes and having that pop up in videos, to me that was very beneficial to be able to actually see that and have hands-on experience, and then talk about ways that we could implement something, not necessarily the rebozo, but those techniques utilizing things that we have on hand.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting that you mentioned getting in the tub and how that really inspired you, because when I first came up with this curriculum, a lot of our EBB instructors were like, do we really have to get a tub? And I was like, I think you do, because it makes a big difference to physically experience getting in it. And then everybody else kind of gathers around the person in the tub. And obviously there's not water in it, and you just kind of talk and hang out and talk about how can we get this in our facility and why is it beneficial and what can we do while the client's in the tub. And so, yeah, I'm glad that you had that experience. And typically what we do is we try to find someone who will lend us a tub because, not everybody just has a tub lying around, but there's usually one or two people in your community who can help bring one and set it up. And I know when I brought the tub, I had never inflated it before because I borrowed it from someone. And these two nurses got there early and they just jumped right in and started inflating the tub, and they really loved doing that. So that was kind of a fun experience that I've had at another workshop. Tell me what you thought, Lori, about the acupressure, because we have a station on that. Was that information new to you?
That information was absolutely new to me. And so I very much enjoyed learning about that, because that is something then I could immediately turn and take back not only to the nurses on the unit, but also to the families in the childbirth classes. So that was something that was very new to me, something I've encouraged people to look into for themselves in the classes previously, but not anything I had actually participated in.
Yeah, very cool. Jessica, what were some of your attendees' favorite stations? I will say, when I taught it, the very first one in Lexington, Kentucky with the pilot, we had 20 people show up. And the ones that I had the hardest time pulling everyone away from was the massage station. Everybody just wanted to hang out and keep getting massages from each other, and the rebozo station. So Jessica, what was the most popular ones at yours?
My attendees absolutely loved the acupressure, and they just wanted more. They wanted to know as much as they could get, because it, like Lori said, it's something that they could do right away. They could practice on themselves when they were there. They loved the rebozo as well. And they're just learning about it because it's something new, it's something different. And it's something that they can implement the rebozo technique just using, the hospital sheet, like Lori was saying, or other items. They also loved the cub, and they were so intrigued by it because
Can you describe what a cub is?
Yeah. So the best way I can describe it, it feels like one of those child or those kid jumpers, but it is in the shape of a U, and you sit on it like a stool. So it reminded me of of a training potty. It's not very tall. It's short and comfortable so that you're sitting, and it's great ergonomically for your body. And there's just different positions that you can go on. So it can act like a birth ball. You can get on it and rock back and forth. You can bear down on it. You can deliver on it. You can do your hands and knees positions. You can do you could do child positions on it. There's so many things that you can do using the cub. And everyone loved that it was, 1, affordable, and 2, they could buy it off of Amazon, and 3, they could use it in between patients and just wipe it down. And they were so intrigued that, for even patients with an epidural who wanted to deliver possibly in a squatting position or in bed, they can put it on the bed, put up the side rails on the side to help position them and help them to feel comfortable in their pushing positions. Granted, they can also change the bed height and, with most labor beds, but there are some that don't work. It's great. So they loved that. They loved the cub. They loved learning all about it. They loved seeing the research behind it. They're very, very, like Cat, the attendees at my workshop were from different hospitals around San Diego. And one of them was a teaching hospital. The other one was a very well-known women's hospital here. And another one was part of a different hospital, different big company. And so getting them all together and just talking about the importance of getting provider buy-in, using research and, the evidence behind it, they were all about that. So they totally appreciated that. And what they loved even more than everything else was talking about protecting the perineum with a wet warm compress. They were so excited about that. And I got so many, little reviews on the review paper that they were so excited to take that back, just that simple information, and present it to all of their nurses. That was the first thing that they swore that they were going to change.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica, for sharing that. Kat, what were some of the aha moments? You had a lot of doulas at your workshop, right? And I did want to say doulas and midwives and childbirth educators and physicians are welcome at these workshops as well. It's just that we kind of specifically designed it for nurses to be able to take it back to their units with some of the information.
So the aha moments, Jessica really just hit the aha moment that came with a lot of the people in attendance, just because honestly, I really feel like they just don't know the evidence behind why we are doing these positions. It's not just to make mom comfortable here. When we talked about that protecting the perineum station, we talked about that warm compress and the evidence behind it, and we compare that to perineal massage, they were just, I feel like shock kind of entered their space. They're like, really? That's what decreases the tear rate? That, that's different from what we've done and what we continue to do. So those were big aha moments that I know that they took back to their facilities where they were. And when it came to the doulas in the room, obviously at the acupressure, like Lori said, that's something they can learn right there and just start doing right away. They didn't need to worry about purchasing anything or talking to nurse managers about getting things or even getting anyone else on board. They could walk into a room within an hour if they had to, into a client's room or a patient's room, and start utilizing those acupressure points, which were really phenomenal. And probably one of the reasons that my timing was off in my stations, because everyone just wanted to stay at the acupressure station for so long. And those were two big aha moments. And the rebozo, a lot of people don't know about it, but even though the doulas that were there that have rebozos, that know about them, that use them, the positions that they were using with the rebozos, some of them were like, wow, we can do that. We can hang it over a door and they can use that for counter pressure and for this way and that way. And it really was, it was cool to be the facilitator in the room and to look around and see light bulbs going on pretty much at every station, every single time someone rotated through. And then during the debriefing after the stations, it was so much fun to hear how people were going to utilize the different comfort measures in their facilities and with their patients and clients when they went back.
Yeah, so let's talk about the implementation. So I remember, Lori, you were really inspired. I remember you were sitting there with this look on your face, like, I need to do this. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And you were thinking specifically about hydrotherapy or water immersion. So what were the first steps you took after you got out of the workshop?
The first step I took was to immediately take it back to our manager and director, and they took it to staff. It has gone to some physicians. We have since talked with some of the doulas in the community as well. And of course, we're not going to be birthing in a tub, but we are actively looking at birth pools to make them accessible to our patients. And that's something that we are moving forward with on a kind of a daily basis right now.
I remember one of the barriers you mentioned was there was such a fear of that a birth would happen in the tub that it was preventing them from offering any tubs at all. And that is a common theme I hear at other hospitals, like, we're not even going to offer tubs in case there's an accidental water birth, which water birth is kind of like a bigger topic, a different topic. Did you hear any of that resistance again when you went back?
There definitely was some question and concern about what if somebody were to birth in a tub, but there was also a very open, welcoming to information, to evidence-based information. If you can show me this information, we absolutely want to learn and to hear and to see what the evidence is behind this, so that we can figure out what's the best thing to support. And that was something that just the nurses on the floor were giving us feedback.
And so how did you get them that evidence or that information? Were you able to use the flash drive that you went home with as a super user?
What I have done is access the evidence-based birth page, but I also have been able to use that to encourage other nurses and even class participants to access that information so that they're seeking information, and that is encouraging them to want to actively participate and to learn more.
Very cool. And so, just so people are aware, I spent all summer last summer trying to figure out what to send the super users home with. I basically settled on 4 mini lessons that they could use, as well as some signature articles that I thought would come in helpful if they were trying to convince administrators or providers to let them start, for example, hydrotherapy water immersion program. So the 4 lesson plans are, we have a lesson plan for what to do if somebody comes to the hospital in early labor and they need to be sent home. So we actually have a lesson that you can use in like a staff meeting about, ways to teach the clients comfort measures that they can use when they return home to labor at home. There is a hydrotherapy lesson that includes a handout about the evidence on water immersion in a tub for labor. And there's a positive language lesson, which is all about the power of using affirmations with your clients, using positive language and avoiding like negative phrases, negative language. And then there's a lesson plan on upright positioning. So each lesson plan typically comes with like your learning objectives, logistics of how you're going to teach the lesson, how much time you need, the supplies you need, and a sample script so that you can just like walks you right through what you would do. And they're really ideally meant for teaching your fellow nurses during a unit meeting. So those are the 4 lesson plans. And then we also send you home with some longer handouts for other hospital staff. I have a lecture handout all about protecting the perineum, which is from an hour-long lecture I teach on that topic. We have the handouts on fetal monitoring, birthing positions, eating and drinking. And then we have some shorter handouts that I give your hospital permission to use with clients. There's one on nitrous oxide, birthing positions. There's this 1-page comfort measures for early labor that you can send them home with if they come in to the hospital in early labor and have to go home. I really just want to make sure that when you leave, you have the power to take the information you learned and like just keep spreading that information. I want to talk a little bit about barriers. Cat and Jessica, you had attendees from hospitals all over your community. What were some of the barriers they had? And let me just list the 8 stations that we had were upright positions during labor, birth ball with massage, environment and nourishment, so encouraging eating and drinking and creating a positive environment, acupressure, birthing positions, hydrotherapy, which is the tub, the rebozo, and protecting the perineum. And so they learned the evidence behind these different things, and then they actually did hands-on practice with these things. And what were some of the barriers that came up when they were debriefing afterwards about why they found it? They were like, well, I can't do this in my hospital because. Can you guys share some of those reasons?
So one of the big ones was, just like Lori had said, having hydrotherapy. A lot of our hospitals do have showers. One of them has a few bathtubs, I believe, but not all of the rooms do. And so providing that for their patients was the barrier. Definitely, like you had mentioned right from the get-go, is provider buy-in. And so that even includes like allowing, quote unquote, their patients to be unmonitored for a long period of time. So intermittent monitoring. And for some hospitals, their policy was like the intermittent monitoring would be like half off, be off of the monitors for like half an hour, and then they have to be right back on at the most. A lot of them were, as far as comfort measures and moving around, if their policy had stated otherwise, they were just really focused on trying to appease both sides of like administration, but also the patients. And so that's what they had seemed really worried about, and taking everything back home. A lot of the stuff they could do without, like you said, the acupressure, but the bigger stuff like having a birth tub, water births like you had spoken about earlier, just things like that, being off the monitor, eating and drinking, those kind of things would go against their hospital policies. And they're just trying to figure out together throughout with the nurses from all the different hospitals how they could approach that and how they could bring that information, as well as protecting the perineum. That had a lot to do with providers as well. And I guess positive language as far as getting the other nurses to be on board as well, because the people who were there really wanted to learn these things, really wanted to make a difference. But they're worried about maybe other nurses who were not as open to the idea, just kind of changing their ways.
Yeah, Kat, what kind of discussions did you hear?
Most of the talk when we talked about barriers was that provider buy-in. That's really where most of the conversation went to. And what was interesting about the conversations that we had with provider buy-in, a lot of the nurses knew exactly who the providers were in their hospital that they would really need to approach and work with and try and get them on board with things. And they also knew the champion type providers that they could approach in order to help facilitate more change happen within their hospital. So it was really fun to see. I had a couple very new nurses there that didn't really know their culture at the hospital that well. And so when they started hearing that at other places, there were definitely providers that were these champions that loved bringing the new evidence-based information to their floors and helping bring on the other providers there. It was interesting to see how their light bulbs went on and said, oh, well, I can look for the certain providers that really care a lot about that evidence-based approach and can help me facilitate this with other providers, because I feel like the overwhelming feeling when you are a change maker, and like Jessica said, the people that attend these workshops really, really, really want to do well and to bring these comfort measures to these patients, but they sometimes can feel isolated and on an island, and it's hard to do that in their capacity. So when they are able to get a physician's buy-in, then they can get other physicians to buy into those physicians, and it kind of can cascade on that way. Instead of working at one level, you can bridge that gap between and then work more as a team for the patients. So it was fun to see that. A big aha moment was that, oh, we have these providers that are these champions and working in this hospital system that we can approach and really create this change.
Yeah, and when you said they feel like they're on an island, Lori, you really are literally on an island, and that made me laugh. So how does it feel to be a change maker sometimes?
It's exciting. It can be frustrating. It can be daunting, but it can be exceptionally rewarding all at the same time.
Yeah, and what are your dreams for change?
Overall, my dreams for change are just to see the families empowered, ultimately to be able to make educated and informed decisions about what's right for them and their family when it comes to their labor and their birth. And no, it's not an affirmation, but even something as simple as, you're not delivering a baby, you're birthing a baby, and trying to encourage that change in our wording and how we say that on a day-to-day basis throughout not only the labor and delivery nurses, but the physicians, the midwives, and a facility as a whole, kind of gives a completely different vibe and feel to how that birthing environment is.
Yeah, the power of language. What are some words or phrases aside from, the use of delivery that any of you, if you're willing to speak up, would love to see changed in the hospital setting? Because like you said, that's an easy thing that doesn't require permission from anyone to just start talking differently. Jessica, you're nodding your head. What are you thinking?
I definitely think that language is an easy change. You start with yourself, and you start with the people who look up to you. And so that includes like the person you're mentoring or the new nurse who you're training. And when I was a patient, but even when I was a nurse, you can really tell in how your language is picked up by the patients that you're caring for. And when I was a patient myself, and I would hear negative comments or even just not so encouraging or motivational comments, it really made me feel discouraged or more anxious. And so, like you said, it's free. No one can stop you from saying the things you say, but it really is up to you to make that cognitive choice to be a positive voice to your patients, to be encouraging, to be an advocate, to say things like, oh, you can definitely do this. Or, one of the biggest things that we've heard, or that I remember hearing when I was a new nurse, is like, well, you think it hurts now, just wait till you get into active labor. You're only 1 centimeter. Like those kind of things they're not as encouraging or motivational for for that parent. And so it can be very, very much discouraging for the rest of the process. And you realize that, and you realize, wow, I really can make a difference just by saying, the opposite of that, just by saying, you can do this. Like, here are some tips. Go home and do these at home. When you feel like you need to come back, and, we'll help you through this. Be that change, be that motivation, be that positive voice for them. And you can make their experience, their birthing experience, their laboring experience, and even their experience as a parent so much more better.
Yeah. And I think one of the lesson plans that the super users can have includes a role play where the nurse speaks with the client in labor and uses what I would say is language that it makes the client anticipate and feel pain worse than they're already. So it's kind of like the opposite of comfort measures, like saying, just like what you just said, one of the phrases, it's only going to get worse from here on out. This is just the start, wait till you feel that ring of fire, and kind of words that make someone anticipate that it's going to be horrible, which, increases their fear. And then phrases like, nobody gets a medal, you look like you're really in pain. And in the station that involves the upright positioning, we have them dancing, we have them doing a few other things. One of the things they have to do in that station is say words of affirmations to the person who's pretending to be in labor. And so we actually have a sheet that says, these are the birth affirmations that a nurse can say to the person who's in labor. And they're things like, you are doing so wonderful. You're a natural at this. You are safe. You're strong. You are meeting your baby today. Everything is going well. We can do this together. You are doing this. And just kind of it was really interesting to see the nurses and practicing these phrases, because it's just not something that is typically printed off and hanging at the nurse's station as a list of positive things you can say to your clients. And it's, like you said, it's free. It's really easy. Kat, tell everybody about the gift we give at the end.
All right. So at the end, we give out the affirmations for nurses cards. So evidence-based birth made up these beautiful affirmations for parents when they're actually giving birth. And I actually have them strung around my wall in my office right now. And then when Rebecca was creating this workshop, and a little bit before, we were talking about how it would be great to have affirmations for birth workers. And so we have these affirmations for birth professionals that we hand out, and everyone gets to either take one, or maybe you have a whole bundle that you get to bring home with you. But it's really nice. So there's some that I love the ones, and I kind of have to explain it sometimes, that say, I am a nurse. And it just says that, and beautiful, I am a nurse, because you can get into a habit, and me as a doula, I can say, I'm just a doula. And Rebecca always says, just a doula. Like, what do you mean? It's like saying you're just a mom. Like, you do so much all the time. So just that simple, I am a nurse, is just beautiful. Or I am a midwife, if you have a midwife that comes, there's a few like that. And they are really beautiful. So I always say, take it home, put it somewhere, you're going to look at it every day, because that power of language is huge. It's not just for your patient, it's also for you, because we do recognize that nurses walk around with a lot of baggage. And I think it's important to always remember that you're that person in the room that is that bridge for your patient between what they need and what they want and what is safe. And it's really this beautiful, vulnerable place to be that is so, so important. So that is such a cool gift to give out. And I'm really happy that we're able to send home everyone with something, right?
Right. I'm curious, Lori, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to share that you think other nurses listening to this might want to know, or words they might want to hear?
I guess I would just say that I've been a nurse for over 15 years, and I grew up as a labor and delivery nurse in that very negative kind of saying, oh, just wait until the contractions really get strong, and just wait until you feel that ring of fire. Oh, you are. And I personally feel horrible for that. But at the same time, you can absolutely listen and learn, and we can, no matter how long we've been doing this, change and be that change and encourage that better environment for everybody.
Yeah. And thank you, Lori, for being so dedicated that you took that Saturday afternoon to come to that workshop. And I know you're working really hard at being that change in your community. And thank you, Jessica and Cat, as well, for continuing to work with the birth professionals in your community. I wanted to close with the birth affirmations that we wrote out for the people who attend the workshop, because I think there's just so much power in words. And hopefully you can listen to these affirmations and, the ones that apply to you, just let them soak in if they apply to you. Not all of them will. I am a nurse. I am a midwife. I am a doula. My presence makes a difference. I am calm. I am strong. I am taking care of myself. She was born to do this. One birth at a time. Birth is the best part. I have the power to create change. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. If you are interested in attending one of our workshops, we have quite a few of these workshops coming up this summer. In June, we have Comfort Measures for Labor and Delivery Nurses workshops happening in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, San Antonio, Texas, and Reno, Nevada, and Nova Scotia, Canada. In July, we have workshops going on in Lexington, Kentucky, Long Beach, and San Diego, California, and in southern New Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia. And then in August, we have one in Orlando, Florida. To register for any of our evidence-based birth workshops, just go to evidencebasedbirth.com/events and you can search for the events near you. You can also filter the search results by the class that you're looking for, whether it's the Comfort Measures workshop or the childbirth class or anything else. Thank you, Lori, Jessica, and Kat for coming.
Thanks for having us, Rebecca.
Thank you. It was such an honor to be able to teach this and to make change in our communities. It's so exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. It has been a wonderful opportunity to provide back to the community.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this panel presentation all about how evidence-based birth is working on helping educate labor and delivery nurses. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you next week. Bye.